Welcome to Overeducated and Underemployed. Today I am here with my interview with Sloan Simpson from the Sloan Brothers is a project that you'll learn all about in the interview. I'm not even going to tell you why it's called Sloan Brothers, but I will tell you Sloan Simpson is the only Sloan. We didn't really know each other very well when I recorded this interview, but in the last few weeks since then, we've become pretty good friends. We talk a lot about different stuff, and he's been super productive writing new songs, working on a whole new full length. When I recorded this just a few weeks ago, the Sloan Brothers versus Jay Gonzalez split EP 7-inch had just come out. So we talked quite a bit about that process. He's already on to the next thing. He talks about that too. It's been an ongoing project and I gotta say, check out that split EP. It's fantastic. It's a lot of fun. I went to the release party and Jay played one of Sloan's songs off the EP because Sloan never plays live. And we talk about why. So anyway, without further ado, here's my interview with Sloan Simpson of the Sloan Brothers. Sloan Brothers never perform live, so you can't catch them anywhere near you. But you definitely can check out their music on Spotify and keep your eye out for new stuff coming every day. Here's my interview with Sloan Simpson.
Let's do this. I think the sound level should be good, but I'll keep an eye on it the first couple minutes. And
Okay.
yeah, we should be okay, I think. Go ahead and say something.
Sloan Simpson checking levels.
All right, perfect. I'm here with Sloan Simpson. I don't even really know where to begin except where I begin with everybody else.
Okay.
What was your favorite song the first favorite song, your first song that you ever loved? And maybe it's not the first one you did, but what's the first one you remember?
The one that pops into my head right now, as far as playing over and over when I was a kid, is probably going to be Joan Jett's "I Love Rock and Roll."
Awesome.
Ask me on a different day, I'd probably have a different answer.
Yeah, but I guess think back to like your earliest memories of music. Was there like a first song that you remember? Just even not maybe not playing over and over, but just like having an attachment to.
Probably not really before that, and so I would have been about 7 when that record came out.
That sounds about right.
Probably about as far back as.
I think that's around the age that most people have said that they pick up on something.
My parents weren't big music listeners around the house, so it didn't start until my sister was old enough to buy a couple of 45s and me hear her play.
Man, older siblings are responsible for so many people just getting record collections and being turned on to all kinds of stuff that they never would have heard. What were your parents into any kind of music or just not into the kind of music you were into?
The latter. My mom played organ and piano in church.
So very musical family, just different kind of styling.
And between church and rehearsals for that, I guess that was all she needed music-wise. So at home, they either read the newspaper or played TV or whatever. But
I got you.
They weren't playing records or the radio at home.
I see. Okay. So now there's, I think for every musician, like a point where it goes, oh, I like this song or I like these songs too. I love music. Do you remember what kind of made that happen for you?
Probably. A lot of people have a different view of this, but to me, the early 80s top 40 radio thing, at least in retrospect, seems incredibly diverse. And it was, I might not like this song, but the next one or the one after is going to be something I like. There was so much different stuff going on. Again, I know a lot of people hate the era and feel like it was cheesy, but there were just so many things. And this was really before I started buying very much music. Wouldn't have been album-oriented stuff for me. It was just one-offs by a bunch of different artists,
That's the way you put that's really interesting to me because even if you're somebody that didn't like all of that music or something like that, I think the point that you made that if you didn't like this song, you might like the next one or the next one.
Yeah.
That's the reason I listen to the only radio station I listen to now is because of that diversity, that switching up. And yeah, a lot of the times I'm not going to like what's playing, but I'm probably going to be fine with the next thing.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really succinct way to understand what was appealing.
Yeah. And at this time, top 40 as a format, it was really just what hit the top 40 versus later on, it became about the corporation pushing down lists of songs that fit a format they were defining. So that top 40 could include synth pop, little bits of post-punk, a little bit of country. It seems like it was not nearly as rigidly defined as radio became later.
And I think the labels obviously had a lot to do with that. Corporate radio taking over a lot of these stations had a lot to do with that. And I don't want to get too far ahead of myself here, but would you say that is like part of the frustration that you felt when you stopped playing music live, for instance?
Not for me. I had already checked out of radio and MTV by that point.
Okay.
When I became frustrated as a musician would have been early to mid 90s, and it was because I was listening to jam band stuff at that point. And
Gotcha.
I wanted to flow like Jerry Garcia and Trey from Fish, but was not willing to put in the practice and effort to pull that off.
Let's take a step back then, but like before that, like what kind of led you from being a music fan to being a musician? So you fell in love with music with the 80s, early diverse top 40. What do you remember what made you pick up your first instrument? Like on your own accord, not because the school made you or something like that?
Probably when I started getting into metal. I got a guitar at 15, and I would have probably been into metal for a couple years at that point. Had a buddy who started drums at the same time I started guitar, so that as that kind of thing normally goes. And after a couple years of playing on my own, I got involved in the jazz band in high school, which I enjoyed a lot, and started listening to jazz because of that.
Cool.
And ended up actually, for at least my senior year of high school, maybe a little bit of my junior year, I played in the local college's jazz band while I was still in high school, just because they were short of musicians.
Yeah.
And so I would actually skip a little bit of school on a couple days at high school at the end of the day, not come back from lunch and go off to the college jazz band rehearsal.
That's awesome. So I'm gonna to now, so we can. Everybody's childhood has these moments, right? Now I want to talk about what you do now, and then talk about what led to that. So you do basically bedroom recordings with a bunch of different, typically Athens-based musicians.
Yep.
And you never perform live anymore. You haven't performed live in 30 years, is that right?
Something like that, yeah. I was playing in the college jazz band when I was a passenger in a wreck, broke a collarbone, and so was not able to play for however long I was in a brace. And like I said, I'd been frustrated with it anyway, and that sort of broke the habit. By the time I physically could play guitar again, I just didn't.
Yeah.
And I had said I was into jam bands a lot then. By the end of the 90s, I inherited some taping gear and started taping live shows from 1999 on. And then the way I got back into music and into recording my own music was when COVID hit and the venue shut down. I couldn't go record live shows.
Mm-hmm.
And I watched what I could on Netflix and was just bored to tears.
Yeah.
And started messing around, and actually was working on playing around with a mix of friends, and I thought this could use a little bit of a drone synth on this. And so I downloaded a free synth and messed around with my actual laptop keyboard. And I was like, this is really fun. And before very long, I had bought a MIDI controller and to mess with synths, and I realized that since I had no technical facility for playing keyboard, that allowed me to hear music in my head and then figure it out on the keyboard. Whereas having practiced guitar and learned scales and all that stuff, in the past I had developed a muscle memory for guitar. And one of the things that would frustrate me on guitar is if I pick up a guitar, the hand and arm muscles take over and play things that I've been playing since I was a teenager without the direct input of my conscious brain. I don't enjoy what comes out of the guitar. So that sort of broke that mold to start messing around with synths, because I couldn't do anything until I had an idea in mind.
Yeah, and you didn't have any rules to break.
Yeah, exactly.
You were really, truly free to just kind of experiment.
Yeah.
So what do you view your role as when you do these recordings, or even before that, like in general in the music scene? I look at you as almost in a way, outside of your home recordings, like a documentarian of sorts.
I was for sure. Since it became possible to record live shows again, I have not anymore. I did a couple. I recorded Jay Gonzalez a couple times during that gray area where it was mostly outdoor shows. The clubs had not opened back up yet, but it took a lot. Not even aside from recording, just the fact of going out many nights a week. Once I broke that habit and learned to be comfortable at home by myself, I really leaned into that.
Yeah.
I was not recording shows means getting there before everybody else and leaving after everybody else. And there's a lot of physicality involved in hauling stuff out, keeping it safe throughout the show.
And you have to really want to do it.
Yes. And so I just wasn't as motivated to record live stuff anymore. And the more I got into recording my own stuff, that was my new hobby.
So what kind of kicked it off? Who was the first person to be like, all right, let's do it? Was it this thing that you added synth to, or was it?
Yeah, I don't even think that ever got completed. That was just
the
spark.
Yeah, cool.
And I ended up writing a couple songs, and I meant to go back and re-listen to those. I'd say that the first one was, I guess, synth poppy, but maybe in that new romantic sort of way. Mm-hmm. And I had no idea that was what I was going to do. I just came up with a couple lyrics, and then some music sprang from that, and I was like, oh, I guess this is making synthy poppy kind of stuff. But it then took me, my first LP was me trying out different styles and seeing what I liked the most.
And working out with a variety of artists.
Yes.
So I want to go back to something Jay said at the EP release party, and I'll have told everybody all about that by now before this interview starts. But he said that you have the same love of pop hooks that he does. And I would just wonder if you could elaborate on that and where that came from, and like how you think that affects your songwriting. And because I would agree, I think I hear it in your songs. Like you're it's almost like the hook seems to be the anchor.
Absolutely. And I didn't know. that hooks were my favorite thing. There was one song on my first LP called Songs Like This that turned into a real hooky power pop kind of thing. And when the album was done and released and I had a little more distance from it, I listened back and I was like, this is really the blueprint for what I want to do going forward. When I was working on that record, I would have that song, go about my daily business and have that song playing in my brain constantly. And it would annoy me because I couldn't get it out of my head. But then I realized that was what we were talking earlier about, the 80s top 40 stuff. Even some of the songs I thought I disliked because they were so maddeningly catchy, that's a strength.
Yeah, I think the worst thing a song can be is forgettable.
Yes, absolutely.
Even if you hate it, if you remember it, it's still better than a song you forget.
And I started thinking, I've always hated that, and I started listening to it again now, and I'm thinking about it, I'm like, no, I don't hate it. It's just maddeningly effective. And now that I've tried my hand at writing my own, wow, that's something that I want to aspire to. If I can get it stuck in my head, that means maybe I can get it stuck in somebody else's head.
Yeah.
Which is a little devious, but...
No, I think that's the goal, though, right?
Yes.
That's always Toxic is a banger. Like, I hated that song when it came out, but you have some, like, kind of time and perspective, and you get to where I think a lot of the problem with some of these songs, too, when they came out, they're shoved down your throat. They're played all the time. You never can escape them. And once it becomes a choice to listen to them, it's almost like the books you're forced to read in school. 1984 probably sucked when your teacher made you read it.
Right.
But then you read it on your own and you're like, oh.
Exactly.
What were you listening to during COVID? What were you surrounding yourself? It sounds like you have music interests all over the place. And I do too. I listen to literally everything, even a little dubstep occasionally.
Yeah.
But what were you listening to, like, when you were recording that first LP, or when you were thinking about starting to record in the first place?
I don't know if this was necessary, but I contracted in my listening and still do when I'm working on something. I'm a little afraid of hearing something that I wasn't thinking about before and letting it influence what I'm doing, which is not what I'm looking for. I feel like, at least in my brain, the formula for Sloan Brothers is set. So I mostly would listen to comfort food music, stuff that I had listened to since high school.
Not new stuff, not
Right.
even stuff that you didn't even necessarily have to listen to. You could play it in your head anytime you wanted.
Rolling Stones, tons of Rolling Stones, tons of Pink Floyd. The only somewhat non-standard answer would be The Cure, because they're synthy and poppy in places, but it's a totally different kind of synthy and poppy. So there wasn't any danger of that influencing what I was doing, I didn't think.
I'm really interested in this idea of, because you're just drawing a line, right? Because at a certain point, everything that you've ever listened to is influencing what you're recording. But when you go into the process, you're drawing a line and you're like, I'm no longer putting in new things.
And that specifically, if I was working on a different project, that I might not feel the same way. But I feel like the Sloan Brothers sound I have in my head is sort of a throwback to something not really specific. Stay with me. But this is a retroactive concept I applied. But I realized that what I'm thinking about with this is, if in the 70s synthesizers had not faded away from mainstream rock and specialized into R&B and synth pop and all that, if you still had crunchy guitars and mini mug synthesizers at the same time, what would that sound like? So it's like
Interesting.
It's like a revisionist history.
I love that. I think it's really cool when a music project has, even if it's not super strict, but like a focus or a goal, or at least a set of parameters. I was talking with Cole, and I'm not sure whether this will air before his, or since they're basically recorded at the same time, but constraint can be a really important thing for creativity.
Absolutely. And I think of it, this idea I've come up with for what this project is about serves as training wheels for me, gives me some guidelines within which to write, which makes it easier, because before that, I'm open up a blank text file and it could be anything.
Right.
I had no idea what I was about to write. Now I know that not only am I looking for hooky, poppy stuff, but that, at least in my mind, that naturally lends itself to love songs or love adjacent songs. And for the LP that I've got finished and releasing later this year, it's called Love and Other Diagnoses. And it's all either straight up love songs or unrequited love songs or I screwed up love songs. But I figured
the songs are good. You just screwed up the love. I just want to
exactly love. Maybe we can patch this up, love. But yeah, I'm going to lean into that for the foreseeable future. If I can, I'm going to write as many love songs as I can and just keep doing it until I run out of different angles to approach from.
Let's talk about your songwriting process a little bit. So there's a lot of different ways people write songs, but honestly, I think it boils down to two different ways. And then the variations within those two. There's people that sit down and write a song because and some songwriters do both, but I feel like they know which when you ask them about a specific song. But some writers, it's like they have an antenna up and they just grab the song and they're just the vessel in which the song comes from. And some people sit down, or some songwriters sometimes sit down, I'm going to write a song about X, I'm going to write love songs. What does that look like for you? Because I think there's variations of those two methods, but I think it really does boil down to one of those two things.
It's a weird blend for me in that I think on the day I'm actually writing a song, it feels like I'm putting in intentional effort. I have a concept of where I want to go, what I'm thinking about specific lines, thinking about rhyme scheme and that sort of stuff. Typically a day or two after I finish it, the memory of that process is very quickly obscured. And at that point, it begins to feel like I just pulled it down from the ether.
Interesting.
And I'll hear certain lines or certain words, or if it once I'm to the instruments, certain licks or riffs that I'll be like, don't remember that, don't remember writing that. I guess it sounds like something I would have come up with, and clearly I did. But it's a neat and interesting feeling that at first it feels like I did this all on my own. And then as time passes, I feel maybe I've just received this or some mix in between there.
That's really interesting because I think when I think about the way I write jokes, I think it's similarly a blend, but it almost happens in the opposite direction. So it's like the joke will almost happen to me or come up naturally. And then I have to sit down and write
and refine
and figure out how to get to that place on stage, because jokes happen in the world and funny things happen, but being able to construct that into something that makes sense in a 5-minute story or whatever, that's where I feel like that's where the meticulousness and but the joke and the initial spark to me is that's when my antenna is up. So I think that's really interesting and like I said, I think there's a bunch of different variations, but it really does come down to those like kind of two categories, even in the same song sometimes.
Yeah.
Do you think that you will ever play any of these songs live ever?
I don't really enjoy, excuse me, to my recollection, I don't think I ever particularly enjoyed playing live. My hands are a little shaky, have always been a little shaky. At home, I can always redo that solo or whatever. You don't get do-over live. And I've become so particular about exactly what I want to hear out of the song. I don't want to give myself a chance to screw it up. But there's so many. I used to joke that I was going to write down a list of all the reasons that I wasn't going to play because there are so many of them. I've got a little arthritis. Just little things that they add.
It just doesn't sound like you enjoy it, or even like you don't feel like you're missing out on it.
No,
even if there's things that are preventing you from doing it, it's also like you're like, I don't care.
No, I like for physical records to exist of the stuff that I made because I grew up in an era when everything was physical, but to make those physical records, you got to be able to get rid of them. And to get rid of them, people say you got to play shows. I've gone to so many shows of my friends where they made records and they played those shows and they're not selling them at the merch table either. So it would be a gargantuan effort for results that aren't guaranteed. Another big part of it is that with it being a recording project, I'm free to use musicians whose schedules wouldn't allow them to play live.
I think about Patterson Hood's latest record that's got Waxahachie and little Lydia Lovelace, and he was able to take Lydia on the road with him for I think a little less than a month, but that's the only time probably that those songs will be sung with her, and who knows if Waxahachie and them will ever be able to perform that song together. So I think that's really, Mike, I'm gonna go back to what you said. Because so many bands, I think, view their only source of income from merch. And it's not that but they have to travel to sell it. Like Mike Cooley one time, I remember him saying, we got it all figured out. We're traveling t-shirt salesmen.
Yeah.
But you've figured it out without having to travel. Or you've at least, this EP that just got released, how many do you have left?
None.
Exactly.
We've got our personal artist copies. And that's
so you're at least selling what you think you can sell. How does that make you feel about the people that really, and I don't necessarily mean the people, but the method that you have to travel to sell this stuff?
It's certainly, at a certain point, it's definitely going to be a limiting factor. For this EP that we're talking about, we did an edition of 75. If I wanted to do 1,000 records, that's in no way viable without touring or some sort of fluke where TikTok or people talking about it, which of course
going viral or whatever. Yeah.
Which you can't count on.
No, of course not.
So it is a limiting thing, but my goal is probably smaller than that. At least for now, the goal in my head is that I would like for some of the people buying the records to be people who don't personally know that.
Right.
Now, I'm not this guy. I love that my friends support the project.
Sure.
But the next step is people who don't have to support me.
Yeah, it's nobody's career is made off the backs of just their friends' support. And the way I've always thought about it is like they're the people that are going to talk to the people the first time they come to your show, so they're not lonely.
Yeah.
But then the next time, your friends shouldn't need to be there. All these new people should have brought friends. So I guess my next question would be then, like, how do you view when you're picking artists to work with, do you think about the marketability at all, or is it literally just people you want to work with?
It's just people I want to work with, and it's in flux. So that first album, I got a friend or two to help, and then it snowballed, and I thought, the more people I'm adding, the more reason to add even more, and I ended up with, I think,
Big news! Wayfair's end-of-season sale is here. It's Wayfair's Labor Day clearance. Right now, you can score up to 70% off everything home at Wayfair. Plus, amazing doorbuster deals and 24-hour surprise flash deals on home finds in every style. This is your last chance to score end-of-season savings, and it's happening now. Did we mention fast shipping on everything? Don't wait. Head to Wayfair.com today to score up to 70% off now through September 2nd.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
35 people helping me on that album.
Wow.
The new LP is, in a reaction to that, is a set lineup for, I've got a standard band for every song. There's some guest vocalists, but the instrumentalists are the same for the whole record.
Okay.
I was like, I want a little more coherence, a little bit of a band sound.
And you said that the first one you were experimenting with a different sound with each kind of artist that you were working with.
Yeah.
And so it sounds like maybe you drilled down a little bit of what you want things to sound like.
Yes, for sure.
Can you talk just a little bit about how the process of that first record, how getting one led to another, and also just how long it took, the logistics? I feel like when you get 35 people involved with a record, it's helpful, but it can also create new problems.
It was fairly painless because part of the criteria was, so this was, let's see when I started. I think I started in the fall of 2020. So COVID was still very much a thing.
Yeah.
And part of the choice of musicians was driven by who could record themselves remotely. Not entirely, but most of the people on there were able to record and just email me their track.
Had some sort of recording equipment at home, some sort of wherewithal to be able to make sure it didn't sound like garbage.
There were one or two people that I wanted to have on the record, and they just didn't have a way to record themselves. This was, as far as I recall, this was before there were any vaccines. I record everything, my own stuff, in my apartment. I did have a couple folks come over and record guitar from my front porch with a very long cable.
Nice.
And I had a couple singers come over and record with me. They would be in the apartment, and I would go outside with the iPad.
Gotcha.
And control the laptop from there.
So you do all the engineering, all the production on these records as well?
Yes, and it's funny that I left this out earlier. A big part of that, when I first started experimenting with the synths and with writing those first couple songs, I've always enjoyed mixing multi-track recordings. I don't have deep experience with it because most of the time when I recorded live shows, it was just a stereo pair of mics. No mixing involved. But part of why I started writing songs is so I would have stuff to mix, to practice. And there's been times when I was frustrated with the mix of a particular song, and I thought, I have so many friends that I could get to do a better job of this than me, but I couldn't let it go because I get better.
Yeah. And I think that's when you get frustrated as an artist. It's not when you're not as good as other people. It's when you stop making progress.
Yeah.
Not that there's not a competitive nature in all of it too, and I actually talked to Cole quite a bit about that, of his competitive nature and how that kind of translated into starting like a wrestling league. But would you call yourself competitive really at all? It doesn't seem like it.
No, not really at all.
Do you watch anything competitive? Are you a fan of any sports or anything like that?
No sports.
Yeah.
I'm all music. I watch movies, but if there's something making sound, it's almost always a record. Yeah.
I watch a lot of like music documentaries and stuff like that too. Or I'll put on like a live concert instead of an album, and just have it on in the background while I'm doing stuff. But when you have somebody, especially when you're there, when somebody covers your song, I'm sure that I can tell that you like that.
Yes, for sure.
But do you get critical at all?
No, not at all. Jay and I texted last minute about some of the lyrics, and in retrospect, instead of just telling him what those specific lines were, I thought I probably should have just sent him the whole lyric for the whole song, because some were different. But that's cool, because that's, whether it was a misheard lyric or he liked the way he did it better, it's an interpretation.
And we've all had plenty of songs where we misheard the lyric for years.
Exactly. I'm still finding out stuff that I've listened to my whole life. That's like, oh, that's what that said.
Anything recent come to mind?
I have really bad memory recall and stuff like that.
Man, I've got a few with even with Drive By Trucker songs that and they print their lyrics and everything.
Yeah.
And I still didn't get it right away.
What happens to me a lot is, I live in an apartment, and the way TV and movies are mixed now, you have to have the subtitles on.
Yeah.
So there'll be a song that I know used in a movie, and then the lyrics are, because I don't always look at the liner notes when I'm listening to a record. But on a movie, they're right there in front of me on the screen, and a line will pop up, and I had no idea those were the words to that song.
I think it's interesting that you trust those subtitles more than your memory.
Sometimes I'll back it up. Sometimes like, no, that really is what they're saying. I just had no idea. This is weird to say, but I've always been a lyric second person.
Interesting.
For most, and not for every genre.
Yeah.
But yeah, what the guitars and synths and everything else were doing was always the first thing that draws me.
Gotcha.
Quickly followed by the lyrics, but...
Are you a singer?
No. I do sing.
Yeah. But
I never sang before I made my first record. And at that point, I guess I could have gotten someone else to sing my songs, but I didn't. The more personal some song is, the more weird I would feel asking someone else to sing it.
And the reason I asked was I've found bassists listen to the bass part, drummers listen to the drumming, at first at least. And even if you're singing all your songs, whether you consider yourself a singer or not, I think is part of why you might be a lyric second person. Because I feel like if you were like, yeah, I'm a singer, it would be weird to me that you don't pay attention to lyrics first.
Not only have I never considered myself a singer, but I consider what I'm doing now, this music, to be very vocal centric. So that was a surprise to me. In fact, the new album has a lot of stacked backing vocals. My voice is low and have a fairly limited range, so I would do what I can in those areas as far as stacking my own voice. And then I got Jason Neesmith from Highland Reenactment Society he's got a great high voice. And so where I needed that, on about half the album, I got him to record backing vocals for that. So
yeah, I actually heard a couple of their songs last night while I was waiting for my Uber after Hayride, but I had to call it a night. But it sounded great.
So yeah, he works at Chase Park Transduction, and we just booked a day, and I took like half the record, and I manned the computer while he would set everything up and then run in the other room, sing, and come back and set up the next one, and I would hit stop and start.
So how much of a song is done before you call in the guest? Or do they start working with you from the very beginning of the track, or is it, okay, I've got this song, and now I just come lay down these parts for me?
I will typically record a demo version of the entire song.
With like scratch vocals and things like that?
Yeah, except the high vocals I don't do because I can't. I like to play guitar solos myself. It's fun. But over a certain tempo, or if a certain intensity level is needed, I got friends who can do better for the song than I can. So when it gets to the point where I know that like Kevin Sweeney might be the guitar player, I don't bother tracking a demo solo.
Gotcha.
But like for the second LP, I did rhythm guitar, bass, and programmed drums for everything. And then the guys that I used for those parts just replaced it.
Gotcha. But So it sounds like you almost have a similar approach with if somebody's coming in to record a solo, you don't want to put anything in their head.
Typically, no. There is one where I thought I was going to be the lead guitarist on a song. Did a solo that wasn't awful, but wasn't what I needed. But Jay Gonzalez took some ideas from my solo and built on it. So that one was a hybrid where he actually, I guess we co-composed.
Cool. Let's go back a little bit to when you did a lot of recording of shows, because I feel like we jumped over that, but you spent years and years doing it. What are some of the shows that you remember the best that you record, that maybe the recordings maybe might have gotten spread around? Is anything like that you can think of off the top of your head?
I have the weirdest recall. If you asked me about a specific show, I can tell you what night of the week was on. It was on, who I went with.
Interesting.
What happened. But with the open-ended, the recall is weird. Just because
there were so many of them.
Yeah.
They blend together at a certain point.
From the fall of 99 until the spring of 2020. And half that time I lived in Atlanta. Then I moved to Athens. So
Were you doing specific bands, or really just anything that came to town that you were interested in, or were you traveling, or mostly staying local?
Mostly staying local. What happened is I was recording jam bands when I first got started, and I lived in Atlanta, and so most of them come through there.
Yeah.
And I was never somebody that needed to catch a bunch of dates on the same tour. So I was more into the variety of the various acts that would come to town until two things happened at once. It feels like I just woke up one day and didn't enjoy jam bands anymore. I think it was probably a little more gradual than that, but it felt like it was just suddenly I just don't care.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people had that feeling, and then some of those bands like evolved with that feeling, and some didn't.
Yeah. And at the same time, right at the same time that was happening, I saw Drive-By Truckers for the first time. And that got me hyped on. I'd been just a little bit of a lull where I was like, I don't feel like going out and recording anything. Then I got into this new to me band, and I started not only recording them when they played Atlanta, but driving to Athens a lot. It really spread out from there because I would record the bands that opened for the Truckers in Athens, who were typically their friends. They picked them.
Yeah. Or at least bands that they really wanted to lift up.
Yeah. So it wasn't just random.
And just so like people understand at home, like some of the openers that they brought to town, and then the Alabama Shakes were an opening band at one of these weekends. St. Paul and the Broken Bones was an opening band at one of these. And then like Alabama Shakes, for instance, I went to Birmingham and saw Patterson open for them 6 months later. They brought a lot of bands that have then gone on and been more commercially successful than them at certain points.
Yes.
And they're almost like a muse in that way.
Yes.
Now, I think the other thing that I think is really important about that time period, especially from 99 to 2005, and I do think the Truckers got put on that jam band circuit for a little while, and so I think a lot of people that were into jam bands got to see them because they were playing like festivals and things like that quite a bit. And especially after the Dirty South came out, I felt like they got put on those circuits. But in 1999, the only bands that would let you record their live shows were jam bands. By 2007, nobody gave a shit. Can you talk about like how that dynamic affected what you were recording?
Yeah, there used to be a couple online lists where you could go check to see who allowed recording it. And like you said, it was heavily skewed towards jam bands.
I don't think I actually realized that. So there was actually like published lists online you could find. Unofficial.
Was on there didn't mean that there might not be an issue on a specific night.
Back then, the venues sometimes would have a real issue with it.
But when I started recording the Truckers a lot, since the opener would be their friend, I would record them too.
Yeah.
Typically, they wanted copies of it because a lot of bands don't get a chance to hear how they sounded.
Yeah.
And it became a matter of just asking. There's so many bands that were not jam bands that I would either reach out to ahead of time or show up at the club and say, hey, I'm recording the headliner. It's cool if I record you guys too. And a lot more yeses than nos.
I want to jump back to the Sloan Brothers for a minute because you've been really modest, and I'd like you to just drop some names of people that you've worked with and what projects that our listeners might know them from as well. Because I think you worked with a really long list of notable, especially in the Athens scene specifically, but this is like one of the richest scenes in the world, musically. You're really working from a treasure trove here, and
it was
brag a little bit.
A lot I think it's the 35 musicians on my first record. They were all people whose shows that I had recorded.
Interesting. So it led directly from one project to the other.
Yeah, I mean they all different degrees of friendship, but they all at least knew who I was when I hit them up.
And that's the thing. That's the other thing I think that's so cool about Athens and the musicians that come from here. They're usually very accessible to their fans.
Yes.
Maybe to a fault. Maybe they might regret it sometimes. But we're really lucky to just be able to literally just walk up and ask these people sometimes questions like that.
Flickr doesn't even have a green room, so there's no choice but to hang out with the fans.
Yeah, there's venues where I'm from that very similar kind of thing. Like you're sitting at the bar with the band until they go on stage. Yeah. So drop some names. Who are these people that you recorded that then recorded with you?
The key to this was, at least for my first album, Robert Schneider from the Apples in Stereo and the Elephant Six Collective.
Yeah. Lived
In Athens for a couple years, and we got to know each other socially, and he was the first person I asked, hey, I started writing a couple songs, and I've got one that I think would sound good for you to sing backing vocals. Would you be into that? And he was like, of course. I don't remember the exact order, but I want to say whoever the next person was that I asked, I said, hey, I'm working on this song, and I've already got Robert Schneider to come in. And then the next person, I said, hey, I've got Robert Schneider and Patterson Hood on this.
Yeah.
So it just built.
Snowballs a little bit.
Yeah, and by the end of it, I actually had a couple people ask me, hey, were you going to reach out and ask me to do anything?
And that had to feel good.
Yeah, it was very cool because it was a totally new role for me. I was as shocked as anyone that I could write a song. I've heard other artists say, I've been writing songs since I was a little kid before I ever really became a musician. The thought never occurred to me.
Yeah. And I want to wrap things up here shortly, but what just occurred to me is like you brought in all these musicians that you were fans of. You'd been going to their shows, recording their shows. What was it like to sit behind the recording console with some of the people that you really admired musically?
Mostly it was remote, so I didn't.
So you got to hide your.
The cool part of that is it made me a little hands off as a producer because somebody would do something and email me the track they did. If I wanted them to make a change, it's a pain. They'd have to set everything up again and do a second round. So it's a different dynamic than when you're sitting in there in the control room saying, could you try it again, but do X or Y?
It sounds like almost in a way you're allowing the musicians to just be musicians and you're just documenting it.
Yep.
And you're still doing the same thing you were doing with the live shows. But, And I think different producers have different roles. I think like Rick Rubin would argue that's not what he's trying to do at all. He's really trying to shape the sound of whoever he's working with. Whereas, I remember his name, he just passed away. He was the engineer that he did Pixies and.
Albini?
Yeah, Albini. Steve Albini. Like, his philosophy was literally just, I want to be a fly on the wall with a microphone. And it sounds like you're closer to that.
My thing was just the surprise of seeing what I get back. And I used to tell people when I was recording live shows that it was like fishing. You go out there and you do your best to prepare to do what you're going to do, but you don't know what you're going to go home with.
Yeah.
Through no fault of your own, the fish may not have been biting, may not have been a great show,
There may have been people in a boat next to you.
Yeah, exactly.
Although I've heard the fish don't actually care if you're talking or not.
I've heard that.
Grandpa just wanted to be a chef. It's been a pleasure. Is there anything else you want to let's talk a little bit about the LP you've got coming out this year and anything else you want to talk about, promote real quick here before we wrap things up.
Yeah, I've got the second LP, Love and Other Diagnoses. We are about to send it off for manufacturing, so I think we're fall/winter 2025 for that.
Cool.
It's going to be on Science Project Records, who put out my first one. It's run by a good friend of mine. Excited about that. I plan to keep plugging away. I wrote a new song last night.
Awesome.
So there's always a delay from when I finish them before they can become public, so I just keep moving and do some more.
Yeah, actually, you mentioned the way that this EP was pressed, and it was fascinating to me. Can you just talk about that process and that plant, the way they press records?
It's a lathe cut, which means that traditionally when records are manufactured, they cut a lacquer from which a metal stamper is made.
And that can usually last about 1,000 copies.
Something like that, yeah. And those are the bulk of the expense pressing it, because you're fabricating something out of metal. That sort of drives the economics of it. And it means that under 100 records or so, you get too much money in the front end for it to be viable to press a small quantity.
Right.
So with lathe cut records, they actually cut directly onto each record one at a time from the source. So we got 75 copies of this EP made, and that means it was played in real time 75 times during manufacturing. And the advantage is you're not paying for the metal parts or the lacquer, and you could they offer an edition of 1 copy if you want, which I always thought was really cool. You could,
Yeah.
significant other's birthday is coming up, you could write them a song and record just 1 copy.
I feel like everybody needs backup, though.
I'm sure.
You're going to play that one.
They make it, it's all priced so that the more you get, that you get a better price.
The first one is always the most expensive.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure. I've really enjoyed talking to you.
Me too.
I look forward to this new LP. It sounds like a really cool concept to just center everything around. It reminds me of like Magnetic Fields, 69 Love Songs, or something like that. So I'm really looking forward to hearing it.
Let me throw one more thing in.
Yeah.
And you may want to cut this or move it around, but the choice of the band on this new record was heavily influenced by my favorite Athens power pop institution, which was the Possibilities.
Okay.
And 3 of the guys who make up the core Sloan Brothers band on the new album were in the Possibilities. That's Kevin Lane on rhythm guitar, Matt Lane, who was the first Drive-By Truckers drummer, plays drums, and Jay Gonzalez. All 3 of those guys were in the Possibilities. And when I realized that I was writing hooky, poppy love songs, I was like, well, those are, of all this pool of friends,
Right.
those are the guys that and I strongly recommend to anybody in the world to listen to the Possibilities Way Out album.
Way Out by the
Yeah,
Possibilities.
it's a masterpiece.
I'm adding it to my list as we speak. I have one last question that I feel like I would kick myself if I didn't ask you, and I'm going to get emails if I don't ask you. It's just you. Why the Sloan Brothers?
I felt like if I just listed it, this is my bias, I felt like if it just said Sloan Simpson, then it looks like it's a solo acoustic performer.
That makes a lot of sense.
I wanted it to sound like a...
And you're playing, they're all your brothers.
Exactly. Exactly.
Thanks a lot, man. This has been a pleasure. Make sure you check out the Sloan Brothers. I'll give you a list of all of their in the links in the comments here. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for having me.
All right, well, that was my interview with Sloan Simpson from Sloan Brothers. I really love their music. It's got a bunch of really great musicians on it, including kind of bunch of amazing musicians on it, including Jay Gonzalez, who I'm going to talk to next week, Patterson Hood, Brian J. Howard from Cracker, Hardy Morris, John Neff, Robert Schneider, Matthew Williams. Just the list goes on and on. You got to check it out. Simpson System Update is available for streaming, as is the split EP, Jay Gonzalez versus Sloan Brothers. One side starts with a Jay track, ends with a Sloan Brothers track. The next side starts with a Sloan Brothers track, ends with a Jay track. Check it out. I'm going to go chew some of that bubble gum that came with my record. Next week, we got Jay Gonzalez from the Drive-By Truckers. Don't miss that interview. He's one of the nicest guys in the world, one of the sweetest men I've ever known, and I really appreciated his conversation. He was really just generous with what he was willing to share. I think it was a really interesting conversation. I look forward to sharing it with y'all. This is Overeducated and Underemployed. Take care.
Wayfair's Labor Day clearance is here. Right now, score up to 70% off everything home, plus fast shipping on everything right to your door. Shop now through September 2nd at wayfair.com.
Wayfair, every style, every home.